molten steel falling from the sky. That's now not technological know-how fiction, it's going on. In a quiet English field, a sparkling orb floated silently, dripping molten fragments onto the earth, leaving in the back of extraordinary, multi-layered metals no one can give an explanation for. Witnesses in California noticed the equal phenomenon paired with strength outages and vanishing lighting. See what happens to a normal school bus, a Terminator, or dishes from an English class when multiplication tables are broken in the back, scraps splatter all over? This isn't simply one unusual story. Those occasions are occurring throughout the globe. Let us unravel the truth, a revelation that could just rewrite the whole thing we realize about the sky and their secrets. Orbs, power outages, and a shrouded truth? Let's get actual right here. Matters are getting downright weird. Imagine this, a sparkling orb floating silently in the back of someone's outdoor in Wickham, England, casually dripping molten steel onto the floor like it is no huge deal. This wasn't a few bizarre weather balloon or experimental drone. According to the authentic poster on a social media platform, it changed into an orb, bright as a celebrity and glowing so intensely you couldn't even consciousness on it. The Digicam couldn't pick out it up nicely of route due to the fact nighttime and phone cameras do not mix. But what they defined, well, permits. To say it's no longer your ordinary nighttime in the nation state, and simply once the idea matters couldn't get stranger, the ground began to hum. This tale comes immediately from the depths of the net before the account mysteriously vanished. Spooky, right? The consumer explained how this aspect hovered behind their residence on December 16th. Their outdoor isn't a few cramped city lot boat, it's an open area in the middle of nowhere, perfect for strolling the dog. No lights, no buildings, just grass. And that's wherein the magic, or weirdness, went down. The orb floated there, silently dripping what gave the impression of molten steel for approximately 1 minute earlier, then gliding off behind a few 40-foot-tall all-right trees and disappearing. Find it irresistible was by no means there. The next morning, armed with a metal detector, the individual and their husband ventured into the field to investigate. And, lo and behold, they found clumps of peculiar multi-layered metallic. This stuff wasn't your average junkyard scrap. It regarded melted and fused love-it-have-been through an excessive warmness cycle, then cooled unexpectedly. The rest of the photos were printed in blue and gray, and the result was as compelling as we'll ever see. Naturally, the neighborhood flora and fauna wasn't packing blowtorches, so what gives? Helicopters buzzed over the vicinity now not long after, which may have been coincidental, or maybe no longer. After all, southern England has its honest percentage of army installations. But is that actually enough to give an explanation for away what they saw? And right here is where it gets even crazier. It turns out this isn't always some one-off fluke. Fast forward to July 22nd, 2024, in San Jose, California. Another sparkling orb showed up, this time over Japantown. This one had a massive spherical frame with a smaller ball attached to the aspect. Sound familiar? It gets better. Just like the English sighting, this unidentified flying object started shedding glowing fragments that gave the impression of molten metal. Witnesses described it as spinning and shifting south earlier than vanishing into the night. Oh, and there was an energy outage proper earlier than it seemed, simply to spice matters up. Coincidence? Maybe, but likely not. By now you're probably thinking, glowing orbs and molten metallic, what does all of it suggest? That is the million Greenback question, isn't it? Could those sightings be connected? Are we searching at some advanced drone-era alien visitors or just an elaborate hoax? The man or woman who posted their story desired to ship off the metallic they determined for evaluation but did not recognize wherein to start. Honestly, who would? Universities? Private labs? Government organizations? There's no clean roadmap for dealing with unidentified flying item residue, assuming they'd even admitted become extraterrestrial within the first vicinity. And just whilst you thought this rabbit hole could not go deeper, another thought-spending sighting popped up in Dallas, Texas, in December 2024. A massive glowing object hovered over the region, shifting slowly and unmistakably seen from miles away. People whipped out their phones to document it, taken aback by means of the sheer length and presence of this thing. The photos turned into now not grainy or tough to interpret. It turned into clear, simple, and frankly, a touch terrifying. Whatever it turned into, it wanted to be seen. Meanwhile, over within the Bronx, New York, Christmas Eve brought its own mild display. Multiple sparkling orbs floated in the sky, and people noticed over a dozen of them from diverse angles. Witnesses defined them as drones or plasmoids, but their conduct defied explanation. Hovering, sparkling, and multiplying, Those orbs placed on a performance that felt straight out of a science fiction film. Some hovered over Westchester, at the same time as others clustered collectively like they had been making plans something. Again, no solutions, just greater questions. The sample right here is simply too apparent to ignore. These sightings are piling up all around the globe, and the so-called experts are staying suspiciously quiet. Government groups are not addressing it. Media retailers aren't masking it in intensity. And in the meantime, everyday oldsters are left scratching their heads, piecing collectively scraps of proof from social media posts, movies, and local news blurbs. What goes on right here? Is this modern army generation we aren't imagined to recognize approximately some type of natural phenomenon we've got never visible before? Or are we subsequently brushing up against some unfabulously otherworldly? Whatever it's for, it's massive. Secrecy, the sudden account deletions, the uncanny similarities between sightings, it all feels orchestrated, like a person does not want us to attach the dots. Think approximately in molten metallic falling from the sky, glowing orbs that defy physics, and mysterious strength outages. This isn't always simply every other bankruptcy in the identified flying object craze. It's a whole new stage of strange. And yet, right here we are, left to speculate while the powers that be know none of this is going on. Maybe they are clueless. Maybe they may be complicit. Either manner, the silence is deafening. As these sightings preserve stacking up, one element is clear. We are on the point of something massive. Whether it's far a step forward in information our universe or a reckoning with forces past our peninsula, it is coming. The simplest query is, can we be equipped for it when it does? To get a clearer image, let's dive into some of the shared elements throughout those sightings. The sparkling orbs seem to percentage sure traits, a spherical or orb-like shape, intensely brilliant mild, and an inclination to launch a few form of molten or metal fabric. Witnesses frequently report silence for the duration of these events. No hum, no roar, simply an eerie quiet. These details are remarkably steady across places and dates, hinting at something more dependent than random occurrences. Another thing is the aftermath. The materials left at the back of the events that are indeed connected to those activities defy simple explanations. Melted, multi-layered clumps of steel do now not simply seem out of thin air. If analyzed, those substances could probably tell us more about their origins, but that calls for the cooperation of scientific institutions. And let's be honest, how likely is that? Then there are the environmental oddities. Power outages, disruptions in communications, and uncommon weather styles have all been connected to those sightings. Is this a facet effect of whatever era or pressure is at play? Or is it simply an unfortunate coincidence? The fact that these events frequently coincide with energy disruptions is tough to ignore. If the objects are emitting a few form of electricity, it's actually effective enough to intrude with human generation. Just while it appears clear, the story takes a stunning turn. For the Rendlesham Enigma. Imagine this. It's far the late 1970s, proper around Christmas, and you're stationed in a quiet little corner of the United Kingdom. The biggest excitement you expect is the occasional inebriated soldier wandering off base. Not anything out of the regular. But then, over 3 nights, something takes place that shakes everybody up. Lights inside the sky, ordinary readings on equipment, and a tale that is so bizarre it sounds a door, it came from a cheap science fiction film. Welcome to the Rendlesham Forest Incident, Britain's very personal Roswell. On December 26, 1980, United States Air Force employees stationed at Royal Air Force Woodbridge and Bentwaters in Suffolk noticed strange, colorful lighting fixtures within the nearby forest. The base turned into home to a stockpile of nuclear weapons, making it an excessive safety vicinity. This turned into no longer the area for casual shenanigans. Witnesses, inclusive of exceedingly trained army officials, defined glowing items with crimson, yellow, and blue lighting that darted between trees like they had a mind of their very own. This was now not your common lighting within the sky tale. What makes this case wild is the audio proof. Conversations between soldiers and their superiors have been recorded for the duration of the investigation. In those tapes, you hear disbelief, confusion, and outlines of a glowing item soaring close to the ground. One airman said the factor turned into about 10 meters extensive, with a pulsing pink mild on top and blue lighting fixtures under. It turned into not just putting out either, it moved. When the squaddies were given closer, the object zipped off into the trees and disappeared. The subsequent day, Navy personnel observed 3 indentations inside the ground, perfectly spaced and about 7 inches extensive. Radiation stages in the vicinity have been higher than every day as well. Fast ahead to December 28th, things got even weirder. Witnesses claimed they saw a triangular-fashioned craft, approximately 9 meters across, land in a clearing. It became not just lighting fixtures this time. This factor had weight, detail, and what some described as an ancient vibe. One airman said it had ordinary markings on its floor, like hieroglyphs. At one factor, beings were reportedly visible near the craft. They have been defined as approximately 1 meter tall, glowing, and semi-carded. Whether they had been actual holograms or something else entirely, nobody could say. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, the deputy base commander, determined to investigate himself. Armed with a Geiger counter and a pocketbook, he led a team into the wooded area. They saw vibrant lights moving erratically inside the sky, and beams of light capturing right down to the ground. Halt recorded his observations, which later became known as the Halt Memo. In it, he defined unexplainable phenomena inclusive of the craft and the radiation readings. Of direction, the skeptics had their say. The Ministry of Defense brushed off the incident, claiming the lights had been probable from the close-by Orfordness lighthouse. But this rationalization does now not maintain up-for-lots motives. For starters, the witnesses had been trained Navy employees acquainted with the local location. They knew what a lighthouse beam gave the impression of. Also, a lighthouse does now not go away radiation strains or make the ground shake. Something befell in that woodland. Something that scared humans educated to stand lifestyles and dying situations. The Rendlesham case did now not just fade into obscurity. In 1983, under the Freedom of Information Act, the United States launched documents related to the incident. Halt's memo was among them, fueling hypothesis and conspiracy theories. Many trust this was a Central Authority cover-up, pointing to the base's nuclear arsenal as a reason for heightened hobby from the others. Why had been lights and craft centered on one of these touchy websites? And why did the Ministry of Defense brush it off so casually? Eyewitnesses like Larry Warren were vocal approximately their reports. Warren, a security policeman on duty that nighttime, insists he saw beings in a craft up near. He has confronted criticism and skepticism over the years, but he stands with the aid of his account. He even wrote a book to document what he saw. Critics argue Warren exaggerated. However, different witnesses verify the various identical info. Whether you believe him or no longer, his story provides another layer to this already baffling case. Over the many years, theories about Rendlesham have ranged from experimental military technology to extraterrestrial visits. Some suppose the USA and the United Kingdom governments have been checking out new plane or guns and used the UFO attitude as a convenient distraction. Others trust it became an authentic near come across. The fact? It is probably someplace in among. What is simple is that a couple of credible witnesses noticed something terrific. Something that has in no way been completely explained. One of the most interesting components of the Rendlesham case is the sheer quantity of witnesses. Over 40 Army employees suggested seeing something extraordinary over the 3 nights. These were now not just casual onlookers. They had been disciplined, skilled people, relied on with safeguarding nuclear weapons. Their money owed included shiny descriptions of the craft's size, form, and movement. Some even described how the object appeared to distort time and space, developing an eerie silence and slowing the whole thing down. The radiation readings are any other perplexing piece of the puzzle. The ground in which the craft supposedly landed showed strangely high levels of radiation,